Hi, this is the next chapter. The Dogwood days and Richard and the Hired Guns. I'd got fed up with Calgary and Edmonton, even though when I was living at Dogwood, I still went out there. I was still trying to promote my album, and but it wasn't doing that good. So me and Lisa had moved from Marine Drive, I think, the house with their parents, up in this Dogwood house in Coquitlam, which was real nice up there. And it was a nice little house, only one bedroom, but we had, I guess the kids used to sleep in the living room or something. Well, when I first there went, we only had Chelsea, and she'd been born in St. Paul's. I went to her, remember when she got born, I whistled at her when she came out. And then Jessie was born later. Anyway, the house had a backyard, a big backyard. We had two dogs, Kayla, which is sort of a husky, and Carmen, which was a Cocker Spaniel. There was an old fish pond back there that was empty. We didn't want to put water in it because Chelsea was only little. And then we had, there was an old tool shed back there. The whole yard was fenced. And me and Lisa had a garden in the back. And then there was a tool shed back there that I started to fix up. I put the tiles on the roof. Little did I know you're supposed to start on the bottom and work up. I started on the top and then, this doesn't work. So then I went down, had to redo it, started on the bottom, put the shingles on the roof. And then I got a whole bunch of insulation and went inside and insulated the walls. And then I put up like particle board and made a little studio in there. It was very small. But I could get my, I think I had my CP80 then. Yeah, I did. The CP80 Yamaha piano, full-scale piano, and my double set of drums, because I remember Jesse used to come in there and play the drums sometimes. And then we had my 4-track TAC recorder. It was a cassette recorder, and my reel-to-reel in there. And Roger Stomperud, who is probably the most responsible guy in my whole life for preserving my music, and he wrote my whole website and everything. Can't say enough good things about him. I even did a duo with him once and went on a cruise ship for a week, and he quit his job and everything, was going to go with me, and I kind of, I don't know, the agent screwed us around, and then he wanted us to have a trio, and so I kind of got fed up and quit, and then poor Roger had to go get us another job, and we didn't talk for years after. And they'll tell Roger finally looked me up again. Meanwhile, he'd gone over to Norway and lived and got married, and he'd suffered depression too. But anyway, getting back to the little recording studio, I recorded 32 songs in that studio with Roger engineering. West said he was going to produce, but he used to come out and get so drunk, he'd mostly sit there and half asleep and throw in the odd suggestion, I guess. But we did all these original songs of mine with the hopes that I could send them down to Al Gallico in Los Angeles from my first album and get another album out or something and get going again. I never gave up, you see, and a lot of good songs on there too. And so anyway, I did all the instruments except the bass. I played all the drums, the guitar, piano, and Roger played bass. And then Lisa and I did all the background singing. Lisa's really a good singer. And we did all the background singing. Roger might have sang a little bit. And I remember the kids used to come in there when I was practicing drums. The Nicole from next door and Nathan, they used to hang around a lot. We used to go hiking through the parks. I'd take all the kids with me, but they used to come over and mess around. And I remember Jesse singing, he had no teeth in the front. He sang, "You drive me crazy." That was a song I wrote, "You Drive Me Crazy." But he was such a funny little kid. I always thought something was wrong with him. He was so haywire, but he turned out to be what a wonderful man he turned out to be. Talented too. Chelsea's talented too and beautiful. Never takes a bad picture. Anyway, they I did all these recordings in there. I was still going to Alberta sometimes, but I was pretty well screwed up. I was going to Alberta, I guess a lot even then, because Chelsea was very little. And because I remember talking to Andy on the phone about stuff, about recording, and he flew Lisa and I to L.A. once when Chelsea was little and she stayed with somebody. So I was going to Alberta still a lot at that time when the Dogwood days, and that's what I hated. It messed me up with my family and everything. And it was like it was hard to have a family and be a rock star. Those two things don't go together. That's why so many people in the music business break up with their families, is because you get caught up in the whirlwind, as I should say, and then, you're torn between the two. And that's what eventually broke Lisa and I up when we moved she moved, I was away in the Queen Charlotte's playing, and she got a chance. Her parents got this house out in Maple Ridge with a big back part, and she wanted to move out there, and I don't know why I ever agreed to that, but she was getting fed up with me by that time. She was she didn't work for the first few years that I was out recording and everything. Well, the kids were being born, and then she got a job, and then it was once she moved out. She moved away when I was up in the Queen Charlotte's, and my poster went missing. Then I had a Norman Rockwell poster that was real nice from an old house, and she moved all my stuff out there. And when I came back, I moved out there with them into that big house, but I never felt welcome there. It was, once she got in that house, that was the end of our marriage. And then I started to rebel out there, and I was out. I had to drive all the way downtown from Maple Ridge every night to play. I was down at the Century Plaza and places like that playing, and I would get home 3 a.m, I was starting to snort cocaine a little bit then because everybody was doing it back then. And I'd keep you awake for hours, and then I'd be up in the morning, getting stuff for the kids and cleaning the damn house, which was always a horrible mess. And I'd always have treats for the kids coming home from school. So that was a hard life. Anyway, getting back to the Dogwood days, we recorded all those 32 songs. And then I sent them all over the place trying to get a deal, but nothing ever happened. But the recordings are all on YouTube, the Dogwood days or Dogwood sessions. I started playing singles after I came back from Edmonton. Some of the timeline here is a little mixed up, but when I started, my first single I think I ever played was in Squamish, and I was there very nervous. And then I started playing singles all over Vancouver. The Woods Hotel, John B. was a neighborhood pub up the road. It used to be packed. I was playing up there when Holiday in Hollywood came out, because I remember all the crowds coming in there and people. I was there when the Whitecaps won the cup, and they all were in there celebrating. It was like an English pub, but it was a real hangout, full every night. But I started playing singles all over town, and then it got to be piano bars after, and my guitar playing got less and less and less, and my piano got more and more and more. And then I ended up playing piano bars. Every piano bar in town, I was booked solid. All of that's why I made good money. But, when you got kids and I'm out every night, it just doesn't work. And, I was playing the Century Plaza downtown, and I don't know, I played all over the place. I did some shows. I did a Rogers cable show for the Tea House in Stanley Park. They did an interview with me there once. I did also a Rogers. By this time, I did the other one, the Rogers cable show. I was living in the West End by then. We'd broken up. I did a show there that's on YouTube too. I think I'd been up for 2 days or something like that, smoking cocaine, for Christ's sake. What a dumbass drug that is. And I went and did that show. Boy, oh boy. Anyway, I played the Sands Hotel a lot. There was Basil Pantages and his gang used to come there. This is after the Dogwood days, so... but back in the Dogwood days, I'm sort of rambling here, but the Dogwood days were wonderful times. And I did a lot of recording out there. And it's too bad that Lisa and I ever broke up, but what happened is once she got out to that house in Maple Ridge, and I was sort of rebelling, I didn't feel welcome. She wanted me to get a job and quit the music business. You know, I'd had 2 albums out, and I was still trying, and there's no way I was going to quit and go be a car salesman or work at McDonald's when I'm, 35 years old. God almighty, I'm a good musician, I'm a good songwriter, and there's no way I was going to quit. So to put an ultimatum at me like that, I never forgave her, and I never will. But she put up with a lot from me, I must admit, and she was a good wife, and so I can't say, I still love her in my heart. So I just don't agree with her on anything. Politics, religion, nothing. That's what party broke us up too. So anyway, after we broke up, one time we went on when I was playing singles, I remember we took the kids up to Kelowna once. For 5 weeks I went up and played this place called the Ouija's up there, where it was a neighborhood pub, and I played up there for 5 weeks, and we took the van, and we had a tent that was like a kitchen tent, screens, and we had that up there, and I would go to work at night. It was so nice up there, nice hot weather, where they were right on the beach at a campground, right across from the pub where I was playing, and I'd go over there. I'd come home at night, they'd be in bed, and I'd sit in my van and listen to music and smoke a joint or something like that, and the kids would play all day at the beach, and Jesse told me some guy was kind of after him there, some gay guy, later on in years. But when me and Lisa finally split up from Maple Ridge, it was just too much. I used to go down and bang away on my drums there because I was pissed off, and, Gordon and Gwen weren't exactly easy to live with. They never liked me anyway. My mom and I went out there once for Christmas, and my mom said, "Let's get out of here," and I said, "Yeah." And they were so thick-headed sometimes, mostly him, even though he was very nice and smart and all that things. But everybody has their faults, and so, they were also nice to me sometimes in a lot of ways too. So, but Gordon used to have a drink at night, and then he'd start to fall asleep on the couch. His head would go back and back and back, and then whoop, he'd bring it forward. Anyway, when we finally did break up, I moved down to the West End and to the Beach Towers, and I was on the 20th floor, and West moved into one of the other towers across the street, and then I started playing all the piano bars downtown, the Plaza Hotel. I did the TV show for Rogers Cable. I did the Tea House interview. I met this guy named Rob. I forget his last name. He started me into smoking coke, and that was a bad part of my life. But everybody went through it, so you got to understand that. All the guys in the music business, I was lucky to survive that. And Danny Tripper lived down there, him and Georgie, his girlfriend, and this other, she was, I think, a native girl. I can't remember her name. I used to go over there and party with Tripper and them at nights too. And I also met this, she was a hooker, I think, or an escort girl, Donna, through that Rob guy. I never slept with her or nothing, but she used to come over and use me for coke, like she'd give me one toke, and then it would be like, then I would buy, so that's a stupid part of my life. I shouldn't be putting this in, but it is part of my life, so if you don't like it, don't listen. And that Rob guy, he eventually got busted for cocaine. He even got someone to break and steal all his furniture once so he could get insurance money to buy more cocaine, and he started ripping people off. That's the whole nature of that drug. And but Danny Tripper, he lived over there. We used to have good parties. And when I played the Sands Hotel, the owner, Mr. P, I used to bring back, when I was going to the Charlottes at the time, I used to bring back abalone and crab for him in big coolers. The Charlottes is another whole experience. I'm going to put that in my sex tape. But I'm going to do a whole program on the Charlottes. Anyway, when I played the Sands, I used to play there, and I used to play the Pacific Palisades. Pacific Palisades, I used to sit at the bar and drink with David Soul from Starsky and Hutch. And I also met Bob Hope 2 or 3 times there. He used to stay there. And Frank Opsel, who was a kind of a wheeler-dealer stock market guy, his dad owned Opsel Steel originally. Frank was a rich guy. He used to come down in a big limo, and he'd be drinking, and he used to bring a little snare drum down and play the brushes with me when I played the piano. But he had lots of money. Some days he'd lose $80,000, and other days he'd make $80,000 on the stock market. He had his own little ticker tape thing in his apartment, and he lived in a big sort of a penthouse thing with a big balcony down on False Creek. I went over there a few times. He had a big grand piano and all kinds of pictures of Sinatra. He used to go down to Vegas all the time, see Sinatra. I remember when Sinatra and them died, years later, Frank said, I go to Vegas now, you could shoot a cannon through it. No, he said, the clubs here are terrible, and you can shoot a cannon through them, never hit anybody. But he used to come down to he knew Bob Hope from some thing a long time ago, so I used to, we used to meet Bob Hope in the lobby, and I even took a picture of Frank with Bob Hope that he had on his mantle years later, and I don't know why I was so stupid not to get into the picture. That would have been a great picture to have. Another guy that used to come down was Basil Pantages. He was from the Pantages family that used to own the theaters all over North America. They started the polar bear swim. And I talked to Basil a couple of years ago. He was actually still going in the polar bear swim. That's like, it's now 2020, and that was about 5 years ago. And I sent him this song I wrote for him called Man About Town. It was a song I wrote for him, and he'd forgot all about it, but I resent it to him. He was so happy. I wrote it for a TV show that he did about what a guy he was. You know, he's like Mr. Playboy with all these. I always had all these hookers or escort girls. Ann Eichler used to know him. Ann from our next door neighbor's sister. Ann used to run around. She was sort of like a bit of an escort girl at one time too, I think. She used to hang around with that gang. Because I remember I went to a party one night at his penthouse, and Ann Eichler was there, and she told Lisa about it. Anyway, Basil used to come down with the gang to my piano bars, and they'd all come in, and they'd be buying drinks and partying, and but they did a TV show about him once on Rogers Cable. About he came up in his, I think he had a Corvette or something, you know. He was our next door neighbor here was his cousin that used to live at where we live at Nickelwind. He was a Pantages that lived, forget his name now. Marcia said he always out smoking cigars and stuff like that. And Century Plaza, I played there a lot. I met Wally Hyde there. He owned a silver mine up in up in Alaska anyway. He owned a silver mine up there, and so he was kind of rich. He would gamble like crazy on the lottery. I remember he won $93,000 on it once, Another guy was Val Koppel, who used to hang around there. And Pat Burns used to hang around there. He was the radio DJ he was really a good DJ. He was like a super conservative, had a heavy talk voice. And he used to come down and drink in the bar. He lived upstairs in a penthouse apartment in the plaza. And he used to come down and drink down there. And we would, I'd ask him all kinds of questions. He was a nice guy. And then eventually, years later, I heard he died. And they said he used to wash all his socks out in the bathtub when they found him dead up there. And there was all these socks in the bathtub. He used to wash all his clothes in there. But he was pretty famous around Vancouver. And, Wally Hyde, Val Koppel, he owned all the Koppel cranes around there. And he these are all in my Beach Towers days. He owned the Koppel Crane Company, and he used to always say, "Hey, Richard, if you ever need something, you just call me up." Yeah, right. And so years later, me and Bill Crompton did call him up, and it's like, "Oh, well, I think the stock market's not going too good right now," and, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I remember once we were partying, and he said, "Come on, we're going over to the penthouse." And so we went over to I followed along with him. We went over to the penthouse. It was the strip club in town where all the hookers hung out. And then, so he gets in there and starts buying drinks. And he had a big suite up in the Plaza Hotel, 2 Century Plaza. And so he hires, there's me and a couple other guys, his friends. So he hires these hookers to come over with us to the party at his house. And we all go up to his place, and one of the guys goes in with one hooker, and Val goes in with another hooker into the other room, and I'm left with the other hooker out in the living room, and I didn't know what to do. I was too chicken. And so I sat and drank with her. I said, "Well, you get paid anyway. Who cares? Just have a drink and relax. It's easy." I sort of understand people like that from being an entertainer where you're hired to do things, One thing that happened to me once, now that I'm thinking of it, when I was downtown, I was drinking pretty heavy back then. I used to always have a Mickey, and I'd take shots before my gigs. And I was playing this, it wasn't the Wedgwood Hotel. I used to play there too, and she was a real bitch. That was her husband. I'll think of his name later and put it in. He was the one that signed Wayne Gretzky. He was a big high roller around town. I used to know him too. And he went broke. Finally, I don't know whatever happened to him. I can't think of their names right now, but I remember her. She didn't like my CP80 piano when I took it in there, so she made me cover it over because it didn't quite classy enough. And you couldn't, you had to make sure you had a saucer under your coffee cup. And, God almighty. Anyway, there was another hotel I was playing downtown once. It was like super fancy, and it was a cocktail party, so I was nervous as heck, so I'm taking shots of rum or something before I go up there. And I get up there, and they got this, it's an upright piano, so I open the lid up to let the sound out better, and I put my keys up there, and I start playing the piano. My damn keys fall down inside the piano. Oh, no. And my old station wagon's parked out in the parking lot somewhere. I thought, oh, my God, what am I going to do? How will I ever get them out of there? And, how embarrassing. And so, anyway, I played the cocktail party. I'm not really good at that kind of thing. That's why I was so nervous. And so when I finished, I thought, oh, my God, no. If they're in that bottom of that piano, what am I going to do? They'll really think I'm a real winner. So I look inside the lid on the top of the piano because it's lifted up. And I guess I'd been so nervous when I came in, I just plunked my keys up there. They'd fallen in, but they ended up catching on a little ledge that it was halfway down the inside of the piano. So I got a chair and I got my arm in there, and I finally got them out. Holy crap. Anyway, that was that was another little incident that happened. I remember that. I'll tell you about that Rob guy later. Anyway, he tried to blackmail me once about some stupid thing. It wasn't a big deal. We were partying or something. I wasn't even married at the time. I was split up. But I remember Johnny Parker, my friend, he couldn't blackmail. He was just going to say that I was doing coke or something, and I don't know. And so anyway, Johnny Parker came over, took a ferry over from the island, and he had a bag of pennies with him. He was going to hit the guy over the head with the bag of pennies and break his arm for trying to hassle me. And I said, Jesus, John, don't do that. Johnny used to say, revenge is best served cold. And then when I used to play there, I sort of tried to date this Heather Grant for a while. You know, after I broke up with Lisa, I went for a long time. I didn't want to be with anyone because I felt guilty. I thought that we could get back together, you know. And then she did come back down once, and sort of we ended up sleeping together, and then she started talking about let's go see a counselor and all that. But, you know, it was just too late. I thought, I'm not going to move back out to that damn house. I hated that place. And, you know, I'd had a nice apartment by then. And, you know, I was playing all the piano bars, and I just thought, you can't go back, you know. And so eventually I went out with this girl named Heather Grant for a while. She used to be involved with this TV show out of Burnaby. I forget what it was called, Dance Party or something. And I met her through West, my friend, and she was out there she was working for White Spot, and she worked with them many years, got way high up in the company, and now she works for Toigo, whatever his name is, Ron Toigo, a big real estate company. I think she's still working. I used to date her for a while. We slept together a couple of times. I don't think we ever really did it, though. I think we just fooled around. And then I used to go to her house out in Richmond. She ended up marrying a guy that was sort of a musician, promoter guy. Her son was he worked for, I think he was interested. They had all kinds of snakes and turtles and everything in the basement in these cages. He was like a biology type guy. I heard he ended up working at the aquarium. He hitchhiked around South America when he was very young too. Anyway, I dated her for a while, and what was that game? Wally Hyde was the guy that owned the silver mine, if I didn't mention it before, out of the Century Plaza. And I used to play this club. I think this is still in the Dogwood days, though. It was called the Pastime Club in New Westminster, and it was a little hole in the wall up above. New Westminster used to be a real rough place at one time, a lot of partiers and drinkers and drugs. And I played this place. It wouldn't open till 11 o'clock at night and go till 2 in the morning. And all the bars would close, like the Windjammer and the King Eddie and the Turf, where all the bikers hung out. They'd all finish work or finish the bar out there. They'd all come to the Pastime Club, and Johnny Parker played bass with me, and I'd play the piano. And we'd start at 11, end at 2, and then we'd go next door, and there was a booze can there. The guy, a friend of ours, he was actually a singer too. I can't remember his name now. He ended up dying of cancer. That's too bad because he was quite good. Anyway, we used to go up there and party till 4 or 5 in the morning. Then I'd drive home. I don't know if I was living at Dogwood or out in Maple Ridge, but anyway, there was no roadblocks in those days, so didn't worry. I never got in an accident anyway, but that Pastime Club was a real hole in the wall There was an old guy named George that was the cook, and there was a big blonde girl that used to be the bartender, and the guy that owned it, he also owned the another hotel in New Westminster. I can't remember the name now. Anyway, he owned that too. It ended up being turned into a strip club bar. It was right near the Pastime Club. I can't remember his name either. Should have written it down. Anyway, around those days, through West, I met John Haynes, who we call Loke, and Leslie. She was a girl that West knew for years. We used to run into her once in a while. And another one of West's friends named Anne. She was the skinny one I talked about one time that always looked so healthy. Unhealthy, I mean. And Loke is on the Christmas film showing Jesse how to vacuum. He was an American guy. He ended up eventually, he started doing heroin though and shooting up, and he got in trouble with the biker gangs over cocaine. And I used to go to his little house in the East End once in a while when he lived there, and he'd be snorting and smoking. He did a lot of drugs, and he started getting holes in his skin that I don't know if that's from the heroin or what. But he said he'd got involved with Agent Orange in Vietnam. He'd been into Vietnam, and I remember he buried a submachine gun somewhere. He had a Sten gun, it's called. I actually looked at it once and held it. He buried it in his backyard once, and when he took off to the island to get away from the bikers, I went over to that house and dug holes all over the backyard. I didn't have a metal detector. I don't know why. Maybe they didn't have them out back then. If I would have had that, I would have found it. But he gave me a map, and I went and dug around, but I couldn't find the damn thing. And I think it was the owner or someone was there. He let me do it, but I wished I could have got that thing. Anyway, back in the days when I was still at Dogwood, me and Lisa split up a few times, and I remember staying at the Cecil Hotel. This is before my apartment in the West End when we split up for sure. I remember I stayed at the Cecil Hotel once for a few days or a week, and then me and Lisa got together, and then another time I split up with her for, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 months, and I moved in with West, my friend. He had a place on Hastings and Nanaimo above a bank. There was an apartment up there, and I moved up there and had a bedroom, and West used to do all kinds of artwork for me, like for Richard and the Hired Guns, and I had a big station wagon, and it was kind of nice living there. Their Olympic Tailors was up the street, and the markets is like an Italian area, and the markets up there were really neat. They had really good food. But West used to make, I still have pictures of some stuff. I used to wear this hat back then, and had a mustache, I think, still. And he used to do artwork about the Hired Guns. There's pictures on my Dogwood stuff. I guess I was still living at Dogwood. I don't know when me and Lisa were having a lot of trouble back then, I guess, and I moved in with West, but we ended up getting back together again. I enjoyed West, though. He was a neat guy. And I remember when we had the Richard and the Hired Guns, that band had Bobby Regan on guitar, Al Forsyth on drums, Johnny Parker on bass, me on piano and guitar, and West got together a group called, they were called I Dreamed I Died and Went to Heaven, Inspirational Singers. And so there was West, and there was Lisa, and another girl that was sort of friends of ours, and then there was a cheerleader from the BC Lions, and someone else. I can't remember who it was now. I thought I did a whole chapter on the hired guns. There it is. We had Bobby Regan on guitar, Johnny Parker on bass, Al Forsythe on, and then we had the Dreamed I Died and Went to Heaven background singers, or inspirational singers, that's what they were called. And we played the American Hotel, and we played we did a week at the American Hotel. There's some recordings of that somewhere, I think. And then we went to the Niagara Hotel and played there. And I don't think we went over too good there. I think we actually got fired or something. I don't know. But it was a good band, I thought. But my music, it wasn't their usual rock music that they were. It was rock music, but more of a blues, Jerry Lee style. So anyway, I made about 2 big trips or 3 trips up to the Queen Charlotte's, once when I was with Lisa and once or twice when I wasn't. And that's another whole big chapter, because that's a big chapter. That place is crazy and scary. Anyway, West used to live at the beach, across from the beach towers too, and I remember my mom came down there once, and there was a guy at the Century Plaza who used to come and drink there, and he gave me enough money to hire a limo for the kids' birthdays to take them around, and I got a film of that. And he wanted me to play his birthday party, and before the birthday party could happen, he died. But he'd given me the money already, so anyway, I used to, I took the kids, and the kids went on this big limo ride all over town. We went birthday shopping. I got a movie of that. Nana came down to see them. I used to play, in those days, I used to go over and play the Avalon in North Vancouver. I would go over there and play the piano bar from 4 till 8, jump in my car, drive over like crazy to the West End and play the Pacific Palisades from 9 to 1. And I did that for weeks on end sometimes. That's a lot of work. And, that was the days we were smoking cocaine sometimes. I don't know. I always made it through everything, though. Jesse experimented and all kinds of stuff, too, but that's growing up, But I played every big piano bar, all the hotels downtown for years, until what happened is the Sands Hotel, I used to play the Bayside Lounge, too. Remember seeing Jim Burns up there lots of times. We knew each other in those days. And the guy, one of the guys that, he was a black jazz player, used to come in and listen to me. And, I'll think about that later. But I used to play the Bosman Hotel, and it was downtown too, on, I think it's Hornby or one of those streets. And it was like a little hole in the wall, but it was always crowded. They had a piano bar in there. That's where I met Robin Olson. She is a beauty, and the kids loved her. She used to babysit my kids all the time, and we became lovers. We spent New Year's Eve together. That's the first time we ever got together and made love and stayed overnight together. Then I dated her for quite a while, and she was a real beautiful girl, blonde hair, beautiful smile, and really nice too. And then she moved into Beach Towers. I didn't want her to move in with me because it was too small. And anyway, she got her own apartment down there. She used to be a courier driver and a waitress, like a bartender waitress, and she was real nice. I used to go down and sleep with her all the time, or she'd sleep with me, and the kids would stay with her. And I sort of, when I went on the cruise ships, we sort of broke up. She was always kind of mad at me, I guess. And then I came back once, and she'd thrown all my stuff out. I'd stored some of my stuff at her apartment. She went and chucked it in the dumpster. And I found my nice coat that I have from Dynamite Productions with my name on it, which I pulled out of the dumpster. I was real pissed off about that. Anyway, I still have that coat. It's got Richard on the front and a big logo on the back. remember there was that's when I started swimming a lot down and getting in good shape. They had a big pool in the beach towers, and I'd go down every morning and swim, and there was only a couple of old ladies in there doing their exercise or something. I remember meeting one guy in the beach towers. He was a ballet teacher. He'd taught the Winnipeg Ballet Company, and he'd taught all kinds of people. He was like a famous ballet guy. But I remember seeing his feet. They were so screwed up from being in those shoes. Because Chelsea used to take ballet when she was a kid. I went to her concert with the Nutcracker at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre, and I went to many shows at the Shadbolt Center that she did. And in fact, on the Dogwood TV, or the film I made at Dogwood for Christmas, I rented this big, huge camera. That's before they had good cameras back then. And I sang, me and Jesse sang together that one about, I don't know, where did my baby go? I heard she went to Idaho. But Chelsea wasn't in much of that film because she was at her ballet lesson. And I remember Mum stayed there then. My mother's in that film. But, what's the guy's name? Garner. Errol Garner was the guy that Bill knew that recorded House of Bamboo. And Linton Garner was the black guy that used to be downtown. And I also met Wes back then, not Montgomery. Wes Mackey, he's a guitar player, a blues guy that's around still. He used to play the Sands, and so did that other guy, another black guy that dresses like a zoot suiter now. And then I used to play the Best Western out in Coquitlam. That's where I met my good friend Ed Cerny. And Ed Cerny was, he's still a great friend of mine. He used to have a rock company that broke rocks. And so I don't know if I actually told the story about our trip to Nashville, but maybe I'll stop for a minute and then I'll get back to you.